A recent decision by the U.S. Supreme Court sets a new boundary between the rights of free speech for labor unions and individual workers. The ruling was in the case of a public employee who was challenging the requirement to pay union agency fees that mainly cover the cost of collective bargaining. The decision has been hailed by supporters as a victory for freedom of speech and association, but it's also been denounced as a setback for the bargaining and political clout of workers. To share some thoughts on the ruling is one of the leaders of the Boston Teachers Union. We'd like to welcome its Vice President, Erik Berg. Thank you very much for being with us, Erik.
Thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
The union has some feelings about this. I'm sure there's not much surprise about this decision, but how much of a setback is this, you think?
To be honest, I think it's a minor setback. As you said, the decision was not a surprise, and really it was the result of a few wealthy special interests trying to make it more difficult for workers to join a union. But I think we have seen in Massachusetts, in Boston, and across the country a surge in interest by workers looking to join unions, and I see this as nothing but really a bump on the road in terms of workers coming together and making their workplace and our country a better place. I think it will continue, our work will continue, and I think as long as there are unions who are listening to members and helping members join together to have a voice in their workplace, we're going to continue to be strong.
Well, the case here, Janus versus AFSCME, you have a public employee. He says, look, I'm getting paid too much money for what I do, and it's killing the state pension system in Illinois. So, he wants the right to sort of dissent from that and not pay into it. What do you say about that?
Well, I say that we have a union here in the Boston Teachers Union, and across the country the labor movement provides a voice for working people, and it will continue to do so. And if there are a few outliers who would like to remove themselves from that, that's fine, but I see that as really something minor, because what we've seen is tremendous success from across the country in terms of workers, whether they're in a union or not, gaining rights and benefits. For instance, here in Massachusetts, we have recently increased the minimum wage, earned sick time, paid parental leave. All this came about because of labor unions and our allies, working people, whether in the labor movement or not, coming together to make life better. I think that will continue. We've seen folks around here at Harvard University, at Marlborough Hospital, JetBlue, and at City on a Hill charter schools in Boston joining the labor movement. People are eager to join our unions because the solution really to income inequality and a lot of the problems we have in the American workforce is organized labor, and I think we'll continue to be strong.
Before this decision, individual workers had the right to sort of opt out of paying money that could be used for, let's say, political campaigns by unions. But on the other hand, what the judge in the majority said here was that basically that everything is political, even if it's just negotiating over contracts, how much you get paid, whether there's merit pay or anything else. What about that definition of free speech?
Well, I think, without getting too much into the weeds on the decision itself, this is part of a dangerous line of jurisprudence that equates free speech with money. And I think that if we, Citizens United did the same thing, and if we go down the road of only allowing wealthy special interests have their say and not average working people, that's a slippery slope. But I do think that average working people have their say, and it's largely through labor unions, and we will continue to allow working people to come together. Unions are made up of working people. Unions have provided not only an avenue into the middle class for my family, my wife's family, I think many American families, and we will continue to do so, but they've also provided an opportunity and a mechanism for those without a lot of money to have their voices heard in the halls of power among policymakers and leaders in the workplace and beyond.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Erik Berg from the Boston Teachers Union about Janus versus AFSCME. Erik, beyond the outliers who might be like Janus, couldn't there be other union members who might say, not that I really care about where the union stands, I just see a chance here to not pay dues. Is that going to happen that much?
I don't foresee that happening in widespread ways. I mean, we, within our own union, have had well over 95% of our members recommit to the union through sign cards in the past year. I think that people are clamoring for a voice in the workplace, and people do recognize that we're stronger together. The labor movement has traditionally provided that, and we've seen people, including millennials at high numbers, looking to join unions. There's a union for everyone in our workforce, in our society, and I don't see this as a major blow, frankly, because we're going to continue to provide people help in the workplace, and I think people recognize that that's important.
I have to admit here that one person was very interested in this decision. I think she even showed up at one of the proceedings, the U.S. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. Yes. What do you read into that?
Well, I can tell you that the DeVos there's an organization in Michigan called, I think it's called the Mackinac Foundation, and the DeVos Foundation also has funded some of the groups that funded this suit. My guess is she's pretty happy with it. But on the other hand, we've seen teacher unions in right-to-work states, including Arizona, West Virginia, Oklahoma, rise up and advocate for more funding for kids and public education, for stronger schools, and I think that will continue. You really can't keep people down. America's a democracy, and people want a voice, and people are going to express that voice. So I'm not worried about Betsy DeVos. I feel like the power of teachers and public school employees is stronger than the power of a few moneyed interests, frankly.
Do you see this changing the kind of thing that we've just lived through in Massachusetts? There was that recent referendum on charter school expansion, and then the vote was to keep the cap, but I guess maybe it was a loss for both sides. We didn't get more charter schools, and we didn't get more money for district schools. I mean, don't you think people are kind of dissatisfied with that?
Well, I think there's a funding crisis in public education in Massachusetts. I think that we need more money from the state and federal levels in our public schools. There's a move to revamp the foundation budget formula for public education. I hope that passes through the Senate and the House. But in terms of the charter school issue, I think we've spent a lot of time and energy on that debate. Hopefully that is beyond us now. In our union, we have had some success organizing Commonwealth charter school workers into the Boston Teachers Union. I think we would like to provide all teachers and all educators a way to band together, join a union, and have a voice in their workplace, and we will continue to do so.
We should also mention, because I know you mentioned the importance of unions as far as helping workers across the board, but in Boston, teachers, you have to work with parents, and talk about what you've been doing in that direction.
We've really built some, I think, strong alliances with families in Boston Public Schools and community organizations in Boston around hiring and retaining a diverse group of educators, around ensuring that parents and educators and students' voices are heard in any policy decision, whether it be around school schedules, school reconstruction and reconfiguration, any number of issues. I think the teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions. I think parents recognize that, teachers recognize that, and I will add that among our leadership in the BTU, we've had dozens of children and grandchildren go through the Boston Public Schools. Both of my children are graduates of the Boston Public Schools. That's true of many of our staff. Many of our members send their kids to the Boston Public Schools. So it's not hard for us, I think, to work together with families. There are natural partners in making sure that the Boston Public Schools and all of Massachusetts public schools are great places to get an education.
Thank you very much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
Erik Berg from the Boston Teachers Union.